Okay, as we're moving into more markup details and links for next week, I want to do a little presentation here to try to add some more detail to how you really use some of these either other block elements, and also especially how you use IDs in classes, which is a more difficult concept to get until you really see it used. First of all, I'm here obviously in a Notepad++ document, and this is really just the document that you've seen before. I'm going to launch this in Chrome, and this is Gina's cover letter, right? Okay, good. And I'm going to, something I haven't showed you is, of course, when you put something like a piece of code in the comments, you can release the comments, and then it'll be active. I save and run. What this does is it says put a border of 1 pixel, which is a small border, red color, solid, not dotted or dashed, but solid, around everything. We don't use the asterisk, which is a wildcard, that often because we're usually much more focused on doing things to certain things, and we don't need to say everything. But for demonstration purposes, it's useful. I don't think you'll use it very much, but that's what that is. These are called selectors, by the way. More about that when we get into CSS. Like we can use H2 as a selector, and of course that links up to the H2 with tags around it, with chevrons around it, which is a tag down in the body. This is a wildcard selector. And this now what has happened is you just see we have a box around everything. And we'll talk more in future weeks about the box model. But just so you know, everything is identified and separated out by the boxes that it's in. And we want to do something to something. We're doing it to the stuff in the box. And everything is in a box. That's part of the background concepts of CSS. So that's what that was doing there. But it gets annoying to look at all those. So let's just get rid of that for now. Okay. Let's use a block quote, which is a block element that you have not used yet, right? So we're going to use a block quote, and it's going to be we'll stick it in under this, in between here in these paragraphs here. Okay. Block quote is another block element. I'm going to tab out, and it is simply block quote open, and then close the block quote. Okay, and then what goes in here is you imagine a quote that you want to be presented larger and separated out in some way to make it more, give it more emphasis, right? So you put quote marks, and I'm going to type a quote that says something like, one of my favorite quotes. And that was said by Margaret Mead. Okay, so that's how block quote would work. And if we just save that and run it and see it, how is it displayed just in the HTML, the way it works? It is like this. It's just indented a little bit. That's all. Okay. Let's do another block quote since we're doing them, because I want to show you some other stuff. I'm going to go down. Let's go up a little bit here. I'll go between these two paragraphs. Remember, me putting extra breaks in, extra like enter, doesn't matter at all. It just helps me to stay organized, right? I'm going to call this a, we're going to do another block quote. I'm going to go grab that stuff because I'm lazy. I'm going to copy it all, paste it in here, and tab that in. Oops. Okay. But this time I'm going to make up a quote from me, and I'm going to say, Gina is the best TA I've ever had. Yes, I say that. about all my TAs. She understands more about why I'm doing this silly stuff. Just a minute. And this will be by checkdowns. Okay, now let's say I have this stuff in here, right? Yeah. Of course, the 2 in is a square, right? All right, E equals MC squared. And the square is supposed to be elevated. It's supposed to be up higher, the 2, to show it's squared. So we have an inline element that we can use for that. SUP, superscript. Okay, so that's superscript, good. And then, of course, H2O, that's supposed to be a capital O, isn't it? The 2 would go down below. It would be a subscript, right? So that's sub. This is how we use superscript and subscript. 2 inline elements you don't use a whole lot, but it certainly is available to you. Okay. And let's imagine that before my name, I want to get a long dash, right? We call that an M dash because it takes up the size of an M, like M as in Michael, but we write it EM, okay? So that's a special character, right? So remember your special character codes? So you should have those handy or look at your book or be ready to use them. You'll use a few of them in future projects. And I'll ask you about them on a quiz too. So that's M dash, all right? And for now, let's just go ahead and run that. Okay, so there it is, and I see you got the 2 goes up and the 2 goes down, and I got a long dash. Isn't that very nice? But what if, I'm going to make this a little bigger. Make this all a little bigger. Now, what if I want to do something like, I want that quote to be really big, okay? But I don't want the other quote to be really big. Okay, I got 2 block quotes. So I can't just say, make all block quotes big. Well, in fact, let me show you what happens if I do. Okay, how would I do that? A block quote can just be a selector of my CSS. Okay, and I always get 2 curly brackets, all right? And I like to tab. It doesn't matter. I don't have to put these breaks in here. It's just the way we organize CSS. You could write it all as one line. You could write everything everywhere as one line. It would all work fine. Well, the entire document from top to end is one long line, just with the code in there. But it would be really confusing to look at. But it would all work, okay? And let's say I'm going to make this block quote bigger. We're going to say font size. Font size. You'll notice that in CSS, like in HTML really to some degree, everything is one word, or it's hyphenated if it's not one word, or it's in quotation marks if it's not one word. And then this grammar that we have here with the colon and the semicolon is absolutely inflexible, and the 2 curly brackets. If those things are missed or anything's misspelled, nothing's going to work. In fact, CSS is even less flexible than HTML. So this is that's 4 EM. Well, sorry, I want to make it 4, not 1. 1 EM means let the type be its normal size. 4 EM is 4 times its normal size. So let's run that. And that's enormous. And of course, they're both enormous here, right? Okay. But what about, well, we didn't want them both to be enormous. We only wanted the one to be enormous for some reason. How do we designate one different from another? And this is how I'm finally getting into the idea of IDs and classes. Okay, so I have to have a way to say this block quote, but not that block quote. Just like I might have to be able to say this paragraph, but not that paragraph. So I do that with an ID. An ID is used for single, one-time styling, as opposed to classes, which are used for multiple times. Okay, so I'm going to make this block quote, give it an ID, and I'm going to call it, whenever I have a properties I give it an equal sign, and then I always have quotation marks, and then I always have something within the quotation marks which tells me what I'm doing. And now I'm just going to use a word. The word is not really important. It should make sense to you. I'm going to use the word big. By itself, the word big doesn't do anything. But what I do is an ID in HTML becomes a hashtag in CSS. So up here, I'm going to use hashtag big. So now this word big here links to this word big here. So the thing that is named big becomes 4EM. So one of these quotes is big and the other one is not. So that's how IDs work. We can use them with regular elements like block quote, H1, H2, paragraphs, or so on. Or we can use them with these special grouping elements too, like div and span, which are the most common ones. While we're here, let me just show you one more thing. I want to show you one more special character and how you might use it in a in this big quote here. What if when I make this page narrower, we'll see that, oops, scroll down. The word Jack and Downs is breaking, right? Get back here, you. The word Jack and Downs is breaking, right? But what if I don't want the words Jack and Downs to break? What if I want those always to have to stay in the same line? I could put something in there called a non-breaking space. All right, I'll leave this size here for now. And let's go back in here. And non-breaking space is an interesting kind of a special character. Like all special characters, it starts with an ampersand, NBSP, and it ends with a semicolon. So this is just a space, but the difference is it can't be broken. I'm going to run it again. And now Jack and Downs is on the same line. So non-breaking space. Sometimes people just use it when they want a space to appear. For some reason, an extra space, you can use an NBSP. Okay, let me make that bigger again because it's getting annoying. All right, let's talk about maybe some classes. What if I wanted to make a bunch of stuff green? Okay, green. All right. I could use a class which changes the color of things to green. Of course, I'm using kind of extreme examples. I'm not sure why you would just all of a sudden make a bunch of stuff green. But what will I make green? I'm going to make this other quote green. So I'm going to give it a class equals quotation marks. And I'm going to call it green. The word green doesn't do anything, but it will help me remember. Actually, you know what? Just to prove to you it doesn't do anything, I'm going to make it George. The class is called George. That'd be pretty silly, and honestly, wouldn't be very helpful to you because you'd forget what George meant. But we're going to make, in this strong, we're going to give it a class of George. Whoops, got my quotation marks in the wrong places. That would screw up. And you see when I do type something like that wrong, Notepad++ will give me some indication with the color that hasn't worked right. So when you see colors not acting right, you're getting that feedback. And then I will make this this paragraph down here also a George paragraph. All right, so by itself, so far nothing has happened. In fact, I can prove it to you if you want. Still got that big quote, but nothing's green. Nothing has happened. Okay, good. But of course, because I need to link those classes to the CSS. And instead of a hashtag now, whereas IDs become hashtags in CSS, in the classes become dots in CSS. So it'd be dot George. And then we've got the curly brackets, which I will separate out. And we'll just say color. And instead of using some other color systems, we can just use color words like that. Make everything that's named George be green. I saved it, I'm launching Chrome, and there's one green thing, one George green thing, another green thing, another green thing. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you about? Okay, I want to do something about divs and spans. These grouping or sectioning things. All right, so let's say I have a chunk of stuff that I want to, I'll do something with. Probably I would do something like maybe change a font, or maybe change, yeah, maybe I'll change a font to serif or something like that. See, this is all this stuff down here is in sans serif. But I don't want, it's a chunk of stuff that I can designate out, which might include a heading and a paragraph and something else too. I want to change the font and all that stuff. Yes, I could go individual to each element and change it, but it might be easier if I could just grab a chunk of stuff and do something with it. Like a way I might change margins and a bunch of stuff or something too like that. So let's go and grab some stuff. I'm going to start my div here right before the H2, and I'm going to open a div. Divs are the sectioning or grouping elements that are block-like, and they can include a single block element or a number of block elements. Like I'm going to use a number block element. I'm going to open my div there. I'm going to close my div after the block quote. /div. Okay, and I see it lights up to tell me that it's worked. And I'm actually going to back that up one notch so I can see it a little better. Okay, so by itself that doesn't do anything. Okay, it just gives me the option to do something to those things. Because of course now I have to give it a way to make that div different from other divs. I only have one div here, but lots of modern pages have lots of divs on them. So I'm going to do something to this stuff, so I have to name it. And I probably name it with an ID. So divs and spans and the other grouping sectioning elements typically do need IDs or classes to make them work. And by the way, you can have multiple IDs and classes, or IDs or classes, or both, whatever, multiple ones attached to any HTML element, like divs or things like paragraphs or something. So ID equals quotation marks, and let's call it serif. So that'll remind me. But again, remember the word serif doesn't do anything, right? And up here, of course, I'm going to make a hashtag because divs are hashtag serif, and I'm going to use my curly brackets. I always have to have two curly brackets. I type them at once so they light up and show me nicely there. And then I'm just going to grab to this same statement here, which is just a font family of serif, which is pretty generic. And frankly, we tend to do more things with font family than just give a generic one like serif, but that's okay. I'm going to run it. Okay, now we see that this type has changed, and this type compared to this type down here. You see it's got the little feet on it, the little curly cues on it, the more detailed kind of type like you see in regular on paper type, as opposed to the blocky letters down here below. So we used a div to change all that. And I don't know, last thing, maybe it's the last thing I'm going to show you, is a span. Okay, so if divs are the generic section grouping element for like other acts block-like, then spans act they act inline-like. They're like an inline-like thing. So let's imagine I want to grab a chunk of text in here and just do something with it. But it's text that's within a paragraph. There's no way to say this sentence here, I want to be different. Okay? How can I get to that sentence? I have to have some way to name it. Well, I need a span to do that. Or something like a span. Oops. I open the span, and then I close the span. Okay, I got a span, and now I'm of course, the span by itself doesn't do anything. I have to give it an ID or a class. And in fact, I could use a class I used before, like the George one, but let's use something different. I'll use it. I'm going to make another one called red. I'm going to make, this time I'm going to name it the thing. I proved to you with George that that word doesn't matter, right? So let's make it a class. Class equals quotation marks. Remember, because I'm going to do this more than once, or I might do it more than once. I don't have to do it more than once. And let's give something else the class of red just to say we did. Let's go to this strong down here, and we'll give it a class also. So we can use a class with a span and then use a class with an inline element like a strong, or I could use it with a paragraph. So it doesn't have to be used on the same kind of things. It's just repeated styling. But of course, it doesn't do anything until I do something in the CSS. And of course, in the CSS, this is a class, so it's a dot, dot red. And you know what? Again, to prove to you the word red doesn't do anything, I'm going to make it purple. So there. This is kind of a bad example, except it proves to you that. Because, of course, if I start making things I call red purple, I could get confused. But I'll do it for this demonstration. And I'm going to run it. And now I've got the purple there and purple there. So you got a general idea about how divs and spans and IDs and classes and then some more block elements work. Last thing I'm going to do, because next week we're moving on into links, I want to make a couple of links for you so you can start to see how links work. I'm just going to pause before I do it though. Okay, links. We're going to do a lot about links next week. You should be starting to read about links in the next chapter for next week. So let me just show you how there's lots of different kinds of links, but the two main kind of links are absolute links and relative links. Absolute links are links to things out on the internet, which is what you normally think of as a link, right? So let's do a link here. A link is likely going to be in regular text, so we're going to do a paragraph, which is the most regular text. Okay, good. I'm going to say Gina enjoys visiting the SUNY Plattsburgh website. Okay, good. All right, so I want the words SUNY Plattsburgh to be linked. So you could click on them and go to the SUNY Plattsburgh website, right? That would make sense. I wouldn't continue to write here and say, and click here, because that would be stupid, right? Because the word click here is not helpful at all. We don't need it. If we see something made into a link and it's words that make sense, we know we click there and that's where we'll go. But it is important that we think about the words that we make into the linked text and that they be useful. This will be an absolute link. So how are we going to make it? It's very easy. It's an ahref. Href is an attribute with a property. So it's equal sign, quotation marks, and then we close the A. So it's really an open A and a close A, and the href is added to it. A stands for anchor, and that's the way we make a link. We make an anchor to a link. And what goes in here inside the quotation mark is, in this case, for an absolute link, is the URL of the place where we want to go. And the safest way to get that is to go and grab it off the actual web page. So if I go to the SUNY Plattsburgh website and select up there and copy it, that's the best way to get it instead of typing it and getting it wrong. And I will just paste it in there. And the stuff that goes inside the quotation marks can be relatively short or it could be really, really, really long. And sometimes it gets really, really, really long. People get confused. They think, oh, it looks so complicated. But it's still just an open A and a close A. And there's an href and there's a quotation marks. And inside the quotation mark is the place where you're going, even if it's a really long thing that you're going to, right? So I'm going to save that. And I'm going to run it. And go down to the bottom here. And there it is. Gina enjoys visiting the SUNY Plattsburgh website. And I click on that. And I go there. Right? Good. So what else? I'm going to make a, let's make a relative link. Okay, I know in a folder right here that I'm working in, there's a cover, how do you say that, Valunga, HTML. You know what, I'm going to change that to make it easier. It's Emma. I should have thought of that before. It's now called cover Emma. Okay, .html. And we're going to go and do that, right? Yeah. So we're going to make a link to that. Again, open P, close P. And if you're wondering, these people whose cover letters I'm destroying and using in this way without their permission, no, it's not without permission. These were former TAs in this course, in the in-person version of this course. And I'll write, I don't know if Gina knows Emma. And I'm going to put now I'm going to make a link to Emma's page here, right? So again, I open the A, I close the A, I want the word Emma to be the thing that's linked, and the A doesn't do anything until I give it an href, equals quotation marks, good. But what goes in here? Okay, this is a relative path. But if the file is right here in the same folder as this file, then all it is the name of the thing. Emma.html. And here it is. We go down there and there's a link to Emma. I click on it and it goes, oh, that's interesting. It says the file couldn't be accessed. So if you make a link and you screw it up, then it will not be found. And why is it screwed up? Because I either misspelled something or I didn't get the name exactly right. And it is wrong. Look at it's not just Emma, it's cover-Emma. And it matters. So I'm going to save that and run it again. I could just go to that page and refresh it, same thing. And now it goes there. Okay, good, that's Emma's page, and I can go back again. Now, one last thing before we continue, sort of last, is that, okay, that worked because this file called Emma cover was sitting here right in the folder. What if it wasn't? Okay, what if that file was someplace else, like outside the folder? In fact, there is a file called, if we go back, if I go to just my folder for more markup basics, I have something called cover. I'm going to change the name of this too. Now I'll just call it Emma, without even the word cover on here. I have a file called just plain old Emma right there. So how do I tell it to go find it outside the folder? Okay, well, that is it becomes a more elaborate relative link. It's not just the name of the thing, which now is called Emma. It's ... slash Emma. ... slash means go up a level and find Emma. Up a level in the structure of the folders. And it opens up again. Well, hold it. I just refreshed it. There, it opened up again. Even though now I just called it Emma, and it's actually, that wouldn't work within the folder. The one outside the folder is just called Emma. All right, let's go even more complicated in this relative path. And frankly, this stuff, how relative paths work, is something that's going to be a difficult area for some of you to really work at it and study it and review, read the book. There's a test yourself stuff at the end of the chapter for this, the link chapter, which would be useful for you to do, because I'm going to be testing you on this. How relative paths work, you have to figure them out in your head. You can't go selecting stuff from up here in like a URL bar or up here from a URL bar. You have to type it in and make it work in your head. Okay, so where was I again? Oh yeah, I'm in the more markup basics. So I'm in a folder called this folder here, and I want to go into a folder called Mashtair and find something called cover letter Mashtair, which I'm going to rename to Cody, because I'm lazy. Okay, Cody. I want to find Cody. Okay, I have to come up out of the folder where I am and go into a different folder. How the heck can I do that? Because of course, if I just say Cody, oops, I want to know if Gina knows Cody. It's not going to work. And to prove it to you, I'll prove to you that it doesn't work. No, can't find the file because it didn't tell it how to get there. Okay, so I have to go up a level, // and then go into a folder called, what's the folder called? Called cover-letter-mashtare. I might as well write that all out. / then the name of the thing. So go up a level, go into the folder, call that, and then go find Cody. Oh, I hope I typed all that right. And I click on it, and it worked. There's Cody mashtare. So you've seen your first look at absolute links, relative links, and the relative path that makes a relative link work. Do notice that this idea of this relative link, it works, this is how it works with links, the relative path, but it also, that's the way it works for images, okay? The reason that this GIF fits in here, comes up right here with just the name of the thing, is it's right here in the folder. But if it wasn't here in the folder, or was it a different folder, like an images folder, for instance, I would have to make a path to get there.